And we're live.
Uh, Skip, I originally had on the slate for us to do Women's Month montage, but I don't want to have to offer a public apology.
Yeah, let's not go there. Let's not go there. No women on the show right now. Let's not go there.
And for the women out there, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, whatever time it is for you right now. Just know that you are locked in to the point with
Skip.
and the king. You guys know what to do. Find us on Apple, Spotify, while you're working out, while you're driving, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, which is hopefully where you're watching us right now. Please click subscribe. I know you guys are out there watching, but not subscribing. Okay, can you hook us up and help us put out better content for you? Because we know you guys enjoy it. Click subscribe, click like, enjoy. Now, and thank you for enjoying our fantastic guest and enjoying us, especially our man right there, Charlie, the mind of a millennium. Okay, he's a very smart guy, very beyond his years. Charlie, how are you doing? And can you tell the ladies and gentlemen where they can find you if they want to find you, especially the ladies? You know what I mean?
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. You can find me at my usual spot and at Twitter at CharlieBender19. And yeah, just post some content, some of my ideas. I like to interact with you guys, so feel free to reach out. And yeah, let's get into this one.
Skip, what's up, man?
Yeah, I think you're our first post-millennial guest. Whatever they call that generation.
Really?
No, he's ahead of his time.
Generation Z, is that what it is? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
I don't know. I think I'm still Gen X.
Oh yeah, you're old.
Yeah, shut up, man.
All right, let's talk basketball.
So yeah, that's exactly what we're here for. Okay. So recently the Raptors have waived Bo Cruz. That cruise ship has sailed, and they brought in the Will to Win. Get it? That's the thumbnail you guys clicked on with Will Barton. And I wanted to ask you, Charlie, like initially, you as an avid Raptors fan, what was your reaction for the Raptors bringing in a veteran to come off the bench?
Well, I liked the move, first of all, but I was pretty surprised. Nick Nurse was giving Jeff Dowtin quite a few minutes, and he has impressed in those minutes. And I think we all really like that. We love our homegrown talent here in Toronto. So we were excited to see what he could contribute to this team, especially in the last 20 or so games with them trying to make a playoff push. So I was personally expecting him to be on the roster, potentially even on the playoff roster if we can get to that point. But so I was expecting them to kind of ride out the season. This was going to be the final roster. But then they made a move in the buyout market, and I really, really like it. He's an 11-year NBA veteran, a shooting guard, someone who can provide bench scoring, which obviously we need. And not to sugarcoat it, we cannot shoot the ball. And Will Barton provides exactly what we need. Like I said, some bench scoring. He solidifies the rotation. He gives the Raptors a true solid 10th man. So Nick Nurse, I think, can look down the bench, and depending on the situation, he has a guy who can fit the need at any given moment instead of asking guys to fill a role that they're not necessarily comfortable with. So I really like the move. I think he's going to be a great help to the team. And yeah, I don't expect him to play too many minutes, but it wasn't obviously working for him in Washington. He had some good years in Denver, and hopefully that's what he can replicate here on the bench in a limited role, but help the team for sure.
Thank you. Skip, what impact because you did, I will give you this one, brother. You did predict a while ago on this show, and even to me in my ear all over the phone, that the Raptors should pursue Will Barton. Now that they have him in Baltimore, born and raised on the playground is where he spent most of his days, what's his effect on the Raptors squad as you see how the roster is fit? What do you see him doing and being beneficial towards this organization and the squad?
Well, I do think that Juancho could have provided 0 points in 11 minutes over his first two games. I do think that's something Juancho could have done. No, I did look. I did predict what Will Barton. If we were going to go and get a buyout guy, I thought this was the guy they were going to go out and get. I just thought he made too much sense with the specific skill set he brings to the table, specific things the Raptors needed, and they weren't going to be able to attract like a really high value.
What do they need?
Well, they need 3-point shooting, obviously. And they weren't going to be able to go out there and get one of those high value buyout guys, the guys who chase after rings. They were going to have to go out and find a guy who was just in a bad situation, maybe a veteran who was just looking to get some minutes on a team to propel his next contract. So I think that's sort of where the Barton acquisition makes a lot of sense for team and for player, because in theory, at least, I mean, the first 2 games have not provided this yet, but in theory, he is that guy who can come in, play 10, 12 minutes, maybe 14 minutes on a good night, spot Gary Trent Jr., spot maybe even Fred VanVleet for a few minutes here or there, and just be an outlet for the offense. I don't think he's a guy you want to be relying on very heavily. Obviously, his numbers in Washington this year were not good. I think it was seven points per game, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. Pretty negative numbers all across the board. You look over the course of his career, I saw some conflicting numbers on this, but I think he's generally seen as not a very good defender. His box plus minus has always been in the negative. His win shares have been okay, but I find that stuff hard to parse sometimes. But essentially, he's not here to be a lockdown defender. He's here to come in off the bench. He's here to hit some shots, and if he can't hit those shots, that's going to be a problem. Now, the interesting thing is those 2 games he played, I think he only took 3 shots, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. So that's kind of makes me wonder if he hasn't quite found his rhythm in the offense yet, if they haven't quite found their way to get him open for those threes just yet. But at the same time, I am a little bit worried about kind of where this might be going. He is an older player. He's 32. He's having the worst season of his career. There are some definite signs that this could be a guy in the decline who can actually help you that much down the stretch. I think of like Rodney Hood. I think of even Jeremy Lin a few years ago. If you want to look at these buyout guys, like sometimes these guys are just done when you get them. So I don't think my expectations are particularly high for this signing, but I absolutely think like he does fit a very specific role off the bench that if he can provide it, will help this team get into the play-in tournament and hopefully the higher end of the play-in tournament.
Can I weigh in here, guys?
Jump in.
All right, okay. My take on this is the acquisition of Will Barton. I think I won't say phenomenal, but I do think it's beneficial and it can help the Toronto Raptors, because this is one thing that a lot of people have not spoken about. He is a veteran. Yes, we are very aware of that. But veteran leadership in the locker room is what the Raptors are lacking, because they're you see it, a lot of these guys, they just want to sign endorsements and contracts, and it's all about them and bling and looking nice and all this. He can actually ground them and like let them actually know what's going on within the locker room. I'm not talking about on court. On court, I think as long as he hits a couple shots here and there, cool, great for him, right? Get a couple playing minutes, you know what I mean? But as maybe one of the leaders, because we can clearly see that with Freddie, Pascal, they're not clearly leaders. Freddie has that mentality. Yeah, Mom, stop it. I said it. Freddie is not clearly a leader. Like, he's more like wrapped up within himself and his own personal life and wanting to be that Kyle Lowry. Like, I'm
just going to say that's debatable, but continue.
But it's the mentality of the like, I'm the heir to the throne. You know what I mean? From I got this. You know what I mean? But you don't got it. So you kind of do need to bring in some veteran leadership, which I think Will Barton can definitely contribute towards Toronto Raptors, and especially with the young guys. Like when you look at Scotty, Delano, Doughton, you look at these guys, Achua. You know what I mean? Maybe he can give them some pointers on how it goes. Like Skip. Like Sean McCaw, when he came on our show and he was explaining to us about how it is for a younger person to come into a team to be a professional, right? Maybe he can offer that, because he on his days in Denver, he's seen the change all the way from the bottom to Jokic. He's seen it, right? and so he's very aware of it. And if for him to still be within the league itself, you know, there must be something there, because you have to understand it's still a business, and you are technically an asset legally. And I think that maybe he can offer that to the Raptors. Like we talked about Thad Young as well doing that. We did talk about that last year, Skip. But guys, now with his acquisition and that cruise ship has sailed, can I ask you guys a question? I don't know which one of you guys want to go first, but now I've noticed over the last couple games, the lineups have changed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The lineups have changed. Wait, hold on. Before I get into that, I'm sorry, I missed one point there. Actually, no. Let's go with this one. The lineups have changed. Now, what do you guys see as the lineups for the Toronto Raptors going forward in their last few games to make the push for the play-in tournament?
I guess I'll jump in on that if that's okay, unless you have something to say, Charlie.
Yeah, no, go for it. I'll go after you.
So yeah, I think I've been kind of looking it over. I played around some lineups today. I didn't really look at the data too much. I just kind of played around with what I think the Raptors' ideal lineup should be. And I think you look at Will Barton, right? He provides the exact same in a diminished role, in a lesser version of exactly what Gary Trent provides you. So I think like those two guys should probably be staggered. Now, I think the easiest way to do that, really bluntly, is I think the best optimal way that the Raptors can roll out consistently good, solid lineups is to put Scotty on the bench, to roll with the 5-man unit of Van Vliet, Trent, OG, Pascal, and Poodle to start the game, and to start the half, end the half, start the third, end the fourth. And then what you have is in my version, this is just an example, but in my version, you have Scotty run all the minutes aside from the first 4 minutes and the last 4 minutes of each half. So yes, he's not in the starting lineup, but he is the featured guy in this bench role. He plays as many minutes as the starters. And then what happens, I'm not going to get into the very specific details, but you can stagger in a guy like a Barton, and he's always on the floor with a Scotty. He's often on the floor with a Freddie. And then he can provide that sort of spacing that he was brought in to provide, versus him kind of being stuck in these all bench lineups or all bench lineups with one starter, where he's asked to like be the guy, or not the guy so much, but be an important featured guy. I think what you really want to do is you want to stagger those lineups throughout the course of the game, throughout the course of the half, the quarter. And I think there's a way you can get like 60 minutes for all the starters per half, 60 minutes for Scotty per half. And then you really only play your Precious, your Boucher, your Barton, 8 minutes, and boom, just like that. You basically got the minutes covered. You don't have to touch Thad Young. You don't have to break any of these guys out. You keep everyone's minutes under 33. There's a way to do this, I think, and there's a way to do it without putting Scotty officially on the bench to really stagger the minutes. I just think that's sort of the most logical, easy solution to really break open what this team is capable of and to really put guys in the best position to succeed.
Charlie,
so
you're up, man.
So when I was looking at it, well, first of all, one of the biggest changes we've seen since the trade deadline, and obviously with the acquisition of Jacopo, was there's been a little more post play. We've seen Jacopo be in not the dunker spot, but definitely the post, and they've been feeding him the ball. He's obviously a big who can pass the ball pretty well. There's been lots of those tree graphics that have been going around on Twitter with Nikola Jokic and Domantas Sabonis and Jacopo and kind of the evolving tree of centers, but he's not at a Nikola Jokic level, but he can pass the ball pretty well for a big, and the Raptors have been utilizing that. There's been tons of high-low passes between Poodle and Scotty or Poodle and Pascal. And to connect that to Will Barton, he obviously played in Denver with one of the greatest centers of all time in Nikola Jokic, and arguably the greatest passing big man of all time. So I kind of looked at a couple lineups from Will Barton's his best years of his career in 2017-18 and 2019-20. And I just tried to compare them a little bit. So in a lineup in 2019-20, the Nuggets rolled out a lineup of Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, Will Barton, Paul Millsap, and Nikola Jokic. And that was the best lineup of the Denver Nuggets with Will Barton playing. And to kind of relate that,
points. Yeah,
right. So if we kind of translate that to Toronto, I think the people that could slide into those roles to emulate that best would be a lineup consisting of Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., Will Barton, Pascal Siakam, and Jacopo. So I think that would be their best shot at replicating what the Nuggets did in that instance. Whereas in 2017-18, the Nuggets played a little bit bigger, where they had Murray, Barton, and then three bigs in Wilson Chandler, Paul Millsap, and Nikola Jokic. So in that instance, the Raptors could roll out OG, Scotty, or Pascal and Jakob in the front court. I just think surrounding Will Barton with guys who can pass the ball while also provide a big interior presence is key. I also believe that, like you said, Skip, even though you said staggering Gary and Will Barton's minutes could be a good thing, I think it would be worth noting on how the experiment could go with playing them both at the same time. Because when he was in Denver, they either had Gary Harris and Will Barton together on the floor, or Jamal Murray and Will Barton on the floor together, and both of those guys are shooters. So if you can have an instance where Fred VanVleet or Gary Trent Jr., is on the floor with Will Barton, it stretches things out even more and gives big men like Jakob Poodle or even Pascal Siakam, when he's in the post, gives them more outlets and more flexibility to create different plays and run some different sets. So it would be really interesting to see how that works.
So one thing I'll say to that is all of my lineups had Will Barton actually beside Fred VanVleet, because I agree that he needs some spacing with him. Barton and VanVleet beside each other. Now, I think one thing I'll take issue with is the idea of surrounding Will Barton with people. You're not surrounding Will Barton with anybody. Will Barton's there to be the 9th, 10th guy. He's not the player he was 3 years ago in Denver. And if you talk to Denver fans, some of them are not super thrilled with that version of the player either.
Denver fans?
He was just on Twitter, just saying like he was a bit of a chucker is the vibe I'm getting from them. Now I think that thing about Poodle is really interesting, because I actually didn't have him in any lineups with Poodle. I had sort of really focused on getting Poodle in with more starter having lineups, and just having Will Barton kind of play those 8 transitional minutes when Poodle was on the bench, because I think it's really important to have VanVleet in the lineup with Poodle out there, to have Scotty out there with Poodle. So I was kind of treating it like you got your Gary minutes, and then you got Barton spotting the Gary minutes. You got the VanVleet minutes, and then you got Scotty spotting the VanVleet minutes. But then you also have Scotty playing alongside VanVleet for long stretches too. So I think that's just sort of like an experiment I did. I could probably dive a little deeper into the data and really find some ways to tweak it, find some ways to shift maybe a lineup I had at the end of the quarter goes in the middle of the quarter or something. But I definitely think that the idea of really having strong lineups throughout the game, rather than just trying to ride the starters for 8-10 minutes in the first quarter, and then being like, all right, here's 5 bench guys for 4 minutes or 5 minutes to start the second quarter or the fourth quarter. And then we see what happens in that Wizards game, right? Where it was like, oh, we're just leaking oil here. We need to get the starters back in with 8 minutes left, and they ended up playing long minutes again, as usual. And it's just Nick Nurse doing Nick Nurse things. There are ways to stagger these lineups better, where you don't have to be going, oh, panic mode, throw out my starters. Everyone plays 40 minutes a game. Like there are ways to do this. Whether it's my specific answer, whether it's your specific answer, whoever. There are solutions to these problems now. In theory.
I do just want to say quickly, when he was in Denver, he was obviously there for many, many years, so the relationship built, and Michael Malone gave him a little more freedom to create for himself and for teammates, where I think in Toronto, he's not going to get that freedom from Nick Nurse, where when he's on the floor, all they're going to want from him is to stand in the corner, to roam around on the wing, and when you get the ball, you're either shooting it or passing it. You're not really getting that freedom to create for yourself, which is why I think having either Fred, Scotty, or Pascal on the floor with him, someone who can create, is what they're really going to need, because he's not going to get that opportunity to create for himself like he did in Denver.
So I have Fred and Scotty. I have Fred and Scotty out there with him every single minute he plays, by the way.
Hold up. Charlie, to your point, one of the Raptors' assistant coaches was with the Denver organization, which Will Barton did say publicly that's one of the reasons why he signed with the Raptors.
That was Portland. That was in his
Portland.
rookie year with Portland. Yeah.
My bad.
Sorry, who's the assistant? I didn't hear this.
Earl Watson.
Oh, yeah. Right. Okay.
He did say that publicly. And now, guys, the other thing too is like I know Skip's been, I'll say it, he's been shitting on Will Barton for the last while. He's not too proud, not too happy. But do you think Skip also did shit on Jacopo that last game against San Antonio, right? Not kind of weary of Jakob's impact within the Toronto Raptors, but it took Jakob a game or two to get back into the groove, and now look how important and how vital he is. Do you guys think Will Barton can go over that hump like Jak did and have a profound effect on the team?
Well, one player's in his prime and he traded a first-round pick for him. The other player got released and you signed him for the minimum. It's not the same situation.
Skip, own your prediction, bro. Own it.
To counter that, though, I mean, he has been around for so long. He has had experience, so hopefully he can use that to his advantage to help adjust. But Jacopo obviously was tasked with a much bigger role when coming to Toronto, whereas Will Barton, he knows his role. I'm assuming Nick Nurse and the rest of the coaching staff made it very clear. So I think it'll be a bit of an easier transition, and it might take a couple games. It's been 2 already, but I'm not too worried, because also, just to be on the negative side, like if it doesn't work out and he's not his self or what they expected him to be, they just don't play him. They don't have a long-term commitment to him. So it's not the biggest deal in the world if he can't give them, 10 minutes a night and put up, 6 points a game on respectable shooting. Like, it's not the biggest deal.
We might see it as soon as tomorrow. We might see him benched. I do think he should get a decent look. I don't think it's totally fair to bench him after one game, but this is Nick Nurse we're talking about.
It depends on the situation. Like, he's definitely been brought in for situational minutes where, like we said, the shooting sucks on this team. The half-court offense is absolutely atrocious. So it depends on the situation. Maybe they're absolutely feeling it in the game and they got their transition game going, and they don't need him, so he might not play. Whereas if the half-court offense is stalling and they want to throw him in there to maybe help boost things, we could see that too.
You just said it, Charlie. We haven't spoken to nauseam about the Raptors addressing the bigs. I think they're listening to us, because we did mention about them addressing their bigs, and they did get the acquisition of Jacopo. And we also did speak about them getting shooting, and with Otto Porter out for the season. I don't know how a toe can be broken. Shout out Raptors Republic. You guys go find Skip on there. He was on there.
Confederacy of Dunks. Yeah.
It's a great episode. Yeah, that was hilarious, talking about his toe. But with Freddie just jacking up random threes from half court or wherever for no reason, when you got open players, we've seen it. We know this. Do you think they actually addressed their 3-point shooting with the acquisition of Will Barton?
I don't think they addressed it to the level where it will get them into title contention, because obviously you need elite 3-point shooting. Available. Right. But I think they did a good enough job with the resources they have. I also want to note, because you said, like, obviously we've seen Fred VanVleet, take these very long shots and sometimes just completely whiff even on the backboard. But I do just want to say that I think those shots will have a little less frequency now, just because he had to take those shots because there was really no one to have that big interior presence to get easy points by the basket. They had to work a little hard for them. So now with Jacopo, like I said, they've been playing more in the post recently. So I think those super long range shots that he's just chucking up there to get 3 points on the board will become a little less frequent now that they have someone who can man the paint.
Counterpoint would be Thursday's Wizards game, where what did he shoot, 2 for 11 or something on threes?
Fair point.
God, that was ridiculous. The other thing I wanted to ask you guys as well is Toronto Raptors. They have a hard schedule. Skip, you told me it's the hardest schedule left in the league for any team, right?
I
Charlie,
haven't checked. I haven't checked today, but it was second hardest earlier this week. I can look it up.
Yeah,
right
they
now.
gotta play. They gotta play Washington again, just before. You guys are watching us. I hope so. But they're gonna play Washington again. But they're playing Denver twice. They're playing.
Yeah, they're hardest in the league right now. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So Charlie, do you see any hope for the Toronto Raptors when it comes to getting into the playoffs? Because, like I said before, to nauseum, let's face it, they make it to the playoffs. Don't expect a win in the first round. They're not going to win a title. But do you see hope coming through the future for this team?
I do see hope. I mean, like you said, Skip, earlier, I am a little bit of an optimist, but I do think this organization is very professional. They know the position they're in. And I think with the team they have, with the coaching staff they have, and with the front office they have, they'll make their best push to get into the play-in at least. I know Masai Ujiri said play-in for what, but with acquiring Will Barton, there's just no reason to not even try. I mean, they're going to try. I believe they'll get into the play-in. I'm not sure about a top 6 seed, but they do have a very tough schedule. They have Washington again, but then they have Denver twice. They have back-to-back nights in LA, Minnesota, which is, I don't know how you want to take that, but Milwaukee, and then Miami, Philly, so Boston twice, and then Milwaukee to end the season. So it is definitely a tough schedule, but we'll see. Hopefully, Will Barton can be the spark off the bench that they need, give them some spot minutes, and help put some more points on the board for them.
Skip?
I just have to say, I mean, if you can't beat Washington, what are we doing here? No slander to Washington. They're okay, but like
full slander to Washington.
Yeah, full slander to Washington. Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, it's the fact that we're in a battle with these teams, the Bulls, the Wizards, the Hawks, like this is not a good team. This is an okay team, maybe an average team. It's not a good team.
Yeah.
And nothing that we've done has changed that. I want to just speak to your 3-point question really quickly about whether the Raptors have addressed their 3-point problems. I think over time, I've kind of come around on this idea. I used to be kind of in this mindset like, oh, you could just plug in like a 3-point shooter. He'll like alleviate all the pressure, like a Matt Thomas or someone like that, and he'll alleviate all the pressure. As I've kind of watched basketball over the years, I've realized like most of the time that doesn't really have much of an impact. What you really need is your core guys to be good 3-point shooters. You need good 3-point shooters who are also good at other things, who can play big minutes, whether or not they're making their shots. Guys like Fred VanVleet. Basically, your stars have to be good 3-point shooters. You can't just expect some guy to come in off the bench and fix your problems because he hits a couple corner threes. It's nice to have that once in a while, for sure, but in the long run, that doesn't really have a massive impact on your team's upside. So I think I think the Will Barton thing, it's a little band-aid that will help a little bit if he can find a shot, but it's not going to drastically impact this team's standings.
That's the thing with the buyout market. It's not
off that band-aid.
Yeah.
That's the thing with the buyout market. It's not to fix big holes. It's to help minimize the damage that's been caused with little holes and try to fill those gaps. So yeah. he's a buyout player. He's not going to solve all the issues, but hopefully he can help.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Well, that's going to lead us into our next episode when we do get to it. But guys, right now we're strapped for time. We're about to get out of here. Charlie, do you have any last words? Shit, it makes it sound like you're on death row. I should offer you a last meal. But do you have any last words that you would like to say to our lovely audience out there that before we get out of here?
Yeah, thanks guys for listening. Hopefully you watch on YouTube. Obviously that's where we want you guys to watch, and thanks for listening. Feel free to interact with me on Twitter. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions, and yeah, we'll see where it goes from here.
Skipper, what you got, brother?
Not much. Just go check out my Confederacy Dunks episode. And stay tuned for next week. We'll have more content coming your way.
Oh, we're gonna have something good. For you guys out there. And you guys find me at King Hussein. Hopefully you guys enjoy this, and hopefully we can continue giving you guys great content and great guests so you guys can enjoy your day, or maybe sit there like we know one person that actually says they have to have their breakfast when they're watching us. On behalf of the three of us, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, and
Peace.